Hi Dipankar.
Hi Subhash, nice to see you. So today we are talking from Craftoplex. We've been doing this series of videos, expert talks that you've been doing. And today we thought that we would have a conversation with you face to face
Yes.
on, let's pick up a topic. What do you think?
Let's talk about risk.
Yeah?
Risk in a project scenario.
Yeah?
Okay.
Sounds good?
Yeah. So risk is a very interesting concept because when we talk about leadership, risk taking as a leadership trait is a positive trait. It's desirable.
Right.
We want our leaders to be risk taking.
But not too much of risk taking.
We will talk about that.
Okay, yeah.
When you think of a project, you want to mitigate the risk.
Absolutely.
So in a project, risk becomes a negative word.
Yeah.
In a person, in a leader, risk is a positive word.
Right.
So how is that? We will talk about that.
Interesting.
So let's understand what is a risk. Risk is always associated with some uncertainty. If there is no uncertainty, things are absolutely clear, certain, then there is no risk. That
Right.
cannot be called as a risk.
Right.
So risk has a probability of occurrence in future. Risk is always in future.
Correct.
Risk is a future word.
Correct.
So there is a probability of occurrence.
Right.
If probability of occurrence is 100%, it's not a risk. Then it's a bad news. If probability of occurrence is 0%, it is not a risk.
Right.
So the probability is between 0 and 100.
So probability, when you say, it's probability of what?
Of the risk coming true.
Right.
Something in the environment, something in the outside world coming true, which you are anticipating, which you are thinking about.
Got it.
Right?
So something is happening in the environment, and there is a probability associated with that.
Yes.
And you have a project, and how is the project getting impacted?
Yes.
By that?
By the occurrence of that.
By occurrence of that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Now, what makes it interesting is the uncertainty of the probability.
Yeah.
In some risks, you can actually, as part of mitigation, reduce the probability of occurrence.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are one type of risks where you can reduce the probability of occurrence. You can't make it zero. But
Right.
for example, when you are driving a car, there is a probability of an accident. It may be very low,
Right.
but there is a probability.
Correct.
Now, by introducing lane concept on the road,
Right.
that probability is reduced.
Correct.
By you driving carefully, the probability is reduced.
Right.
By your rear view cameras, the probability is reduced,
Right.
and so on.
So if I may interrupt here, so when you are saying probability of reducing the risks, so there are two parts to it, right? One is within the project. If I'm a project manager and I'm managing the project, there are certain things which are under your control, right? Which you can play a part in reducing. The other thing is about environment. Like for example, you mentioned about drawing the lanes on the road,
Yes,
right?
yes.
That is done by somebody else. So
Yeah.
environment
Yeah.
is doing that. So
Yes.
it's a combination of
Yeah.
both,
Yes,
right?
yes. Yeah. So there are multiple types of risks. Only in certain types of risk you have a play with the probability,
Right.
and you can reduce the probability.
Correct.
In other risks, you can think of reducing the impact. If the risk were to come true,
Right.
how can I not be impacted? What can I do so that I am not impacted? The
Okay.
example is, it's going to rain, there is a probability of raining,
Right.
but I have umbrella.
Correct.
So I can reduce the impact on me.
Right.
I don't get wet.
Right.
So that's the second type of mitigation where you reduce the impact.
Right.
In some risks, you can actually do both.
Hmm.
You can reduce the probability, you can reduce the impact.
Okay.
And that is a good mitigation
Yes.
because it mitigates to a very significant level.
Right.
There is a third type of risk which are internal to us, internal to the project, where the entire risk can be eliminated. So, to summarize, there are three types of risk. The first category is something which is not in your control, where you can only reduce the impact. The second category, which is partially in your control, you can reduce the probability. And third, which is fully in your control, you can eliminate the risk.
Right.
These are the three types of risks.
Okay. And let's assume that in a project you are working with multiple parties. Like for example, you're working with a vendor,
Yes.
or you're working
Suppliers.
with suppliers, or other parts of the organization are contributing towards that, right? Now, in that multi-dimensional play of a project, what are the steps? Can you elaborate a bit?
So there is a concept called dependency, and sometimes it can be even interdependency,
Right.
where A is dependent on B, but B is dependent on A.
Correct.
So that's interdependency.
Correct.
Now, dependency can also create a risk,
Right.
because what if that person does not fulfill the dependency,
Correct.
does not do what you expect that person to do?
Right.
Then that can create a risk.
Correct.
So dependency is a concept which is associated with the risk, but dependencies are to be managed, risks are to be mitigated. That's the difference between the two.
Right. Right. Okay. Now tell me, sometimes we interchangeably hear the word risk, then we hear the word issues, right? And there are various interpretations. What are your thoughts? How do you see it?
Very interesting, and I'll keep it very, very simple. Issue is a present word. It's in present tense. We have an issue today.
Correct.
Risk is a future word.
It is going to happen in future.
It has a probability of something going wrong.
Right.
When it goes wrong, that day you can call it an issue.
Correct.
But today it is a risk.
Right. So on a time scale, issue is what's happening now, and risk is something which you can foresee,
Yes.
and you plan, and
Yes.
you eliminate, you diminish, or
Yeah.
you address.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. Okay. So thank you for
My pleasure.
wonderful talk. Thank you. We'll talk again.
Yes.